All right, today we're going to dive into something really fascinating. It's a fictional research paper. Yeah, but it's one of those ideas that sits right at the crossroads of biology, physics, and, well, ethics. It asks a pretty radical question that could totally change how we think about the stuff we use to build our world.
I mean, just think about that for a second. What if the pipes and grids and networks that keep our lives running weren't just dumb, static objects? What if they were living systems that could actually feel when something's wrong and then actively work to fix it? That's the wild idea we're going to explore. So, here's our game plan. First, we'll look at the problem, what the paper calls our brittle cities. Then, we'll see how nature offers a much smarter way. After that, we get into the really cool stuff, the physics of tenderness, and a material that can literally feel. We'll even check out a simulation to see it in action, and then wrap up with what it all could mean for the future.
Okay, so let's jump right in with the problem. The paper's whole argument starts with a simple observation. Our modern infrastructure, our water systems, our power grids, it's all fundamentally rigid. It's brittle, and it's just way too slow to keep up with all the pressures of our world today.
And this slide lays it out perfectly. On the left, that's what we've got now, these top-down, centralized systems that just break under pressure. But on the right, that's the goal, a system that acts more like a living thing, with smarts spread all throughout it, letting it react to problems locally and, instantly. The whole point is to get from the left side of this slide to the right.
So, if our way of doing things is broken, where do we find a better model? Well, the paper suggests we just need to look down. The answer is right there, under our feet. It's nature's own masterclass in building smart infrastructure.
And that brings us to mycelial networks. These things are absolutely incredible. They're these vast underground fungal systems, kind of like nature's internet, and they're constantly rewiring themselves. They can sense where nutrients are needed and physically change their own shape to get those resources where they need to go, making sure the entire network is healthy. It's just a beautiful example of decentralized smarts.
Okay, this is where we get to the real heart of the paper. It's a concept the author calls the physics of tenderness. I know, it sounds a little out there, right? This is where hardcore engineering gets a conscience, blending real science with ideas that sound like they belong in a philosophy class.
So the key idea here is something called mercy pressure. Now, physically, it's just hydraulic strain, a blockage or a shortage somewhere. But the genius of the paper is how it reframes this. It's not just a technical problem, it's the system's cry for help. It's a real, measurable signal that one part of the network is in trouble, and that signal is what kicks the whole healing process into gear. And the ultimate goal, the whole point, is to reach this state of tenderness equilibrium. See, it's not just about being the most efficient system possible. It's about finding that perfect, stable sweet spot where everything is running smoothly and every part of the system is being taken care of. Efficiency and fairness aren't enemies here, they're partners. This quote from the paper's fictional author really just nails it. A regime where moral and energetic equilibria are mathematically inseparable. I mean, wow. What they're saying is that in a system like this, being fair, making sure no part is left behind, and being efficient, they become the same thing. You literally can't have one without the other. The math just doesn't work. Okay, I know what you might be thinking. This all sounds great, very poetic, but how could a material, a physical thing, actually do this? Let's get into the nuts and bolts. So the paper has this super complex equation, but you can really boil it down to these 4 simple steps. First, the material senses that mercy pressure we were talking about. Second, it physically changes its own internal structure, just like one of those fungal networks. Third, and this is so key, if it senses that one area is being starved, it sends out a redistribution pulse to fix the problem. And finally, it has a built-in brake, a way to dampen things so it doesn't overcorrect and just spiral out of control. It's a really elegant feedback loop. So, to prove this wasn't just a cool theory, the researchers ran a simulation. They created a virtual 10 by 10 meter smart tile in a computer. Then they stressed it out on purpose. They created a sudden, massive demand in one spot, kind of like a water main break, just to see what the tile would do. And here's what they saw. In the first cycle, the system just kind of wakes up and notices the stress. By cycle 3, it's actually overreacting. It's changing too fast and fairness hits rock bottom. But, and this is the amazing part, that very low point is what triggers the correction. By cycle 4, that redistribution pulse kicks in and stabilizes everything. And by cycle 6, the whole thing settles into a calm, steady rhythm that the paper calls bounded breathing. This chart really lets you see that breathing in action. That big bar on the left, that's what's called topological variance. It's basically a measure of how much the tile's internal shape is changing. You can see it goes crazy there in cycle 3 during the panic. But then look, as the system corrects itself, it settles right down into that gentle, steady pulse. It's not dead. It's reached a living, healthy equilibrium. But this is probably the single most important result from the entire study. The system had one non-negotiable rule programmed into it. Local fairness, represented by E, could never ever fall below a certain line. And it never did. Even at the absolute peak of the crisis, the system's built-in compassion mechanism kicked in to make sure no part of the network was ever abandoned. The fairness rule held strong.
So let's zoom out. A smart tile in a computer is one thing, but what does all of this actually mean for us in the real world? Why does any of this matter? Well, the implications are just huge. Think about it. We're talking about urban water systems with pipes that can feel when a neighborhood is underserved and automatically reroute water there. Energy grids that balance themselves to prevent blackouts without anyone in a control room flipping a switch. You could even build data networks that are physically incapable of creating bandwidth hogs. It's about literally encoding fairness into the very substrate of our world. At the end of the day, that's the real vision here. It's a complete shift in how we think about building things. We would stop creating dumb, brittle objects, and we'd start cultivating living, breathing organisms that can sense their own pain and actually heal themselves. And that leaves us with one last really big thought to chew on. This paper suggests that we can embed our deepest values, things like compassion, directly into the physics of the world we create. So the real question it's asking us is this: if we can build with mercy, what other virtues can we engineer into the very fabric of our future?